You know, some words, they're not just words. They're more like tiny little time capsules, right? They carry these entire histories packed right into their shape. And today, we are going to crack one open. Okay, so this phrase right here, a lot of you probably recognize this. It's the central chant, the Odaimoku, in a few different schools of Buddhism. It's this beautiful, profound invocation of the wondrous Dharma of the Lotus Sutra. But here's the thing, we're not going to tackle the whole phrase today. Nope, we are going to zoom in, like way in, on just one single piece of it. And this is it, the character myo. Now, if you look it up, you'll see it translated as wondrous, or maybe mystic, subtle. And yeah, that's all true. But that's just the surface. The real story, the secret, is in how this character is actually built. Its DNA, if you will. And that story, wow, it connects us to one of the most profound teachings in all of Mahāyāna Buddhism. So that brings us to this question, which is really going to be our guide for this whole thing. What if a word, a single character, could remember a truth that we've forgotten? That's what we're doing today. We're going on a little expedition right into the heart of this character to see what it remembers and what that might mean for how we see everything. You ready? Let's dive in. All right, first things first. To really get this, we've got to do a bit of deconstruction. We're going to take this character apart, kind of like taking apart a watch, to see all the little pieces inside. See, a lot of Chinese characters aren't just random squiggles. They're actually built from smaller pictures that have their own meanings. So when you break my yu down, you get two distinct parts. On the left, you've got onna, which means woman, and on the right, shou, which means young or small. So, a young woman. Seems pretty straightforward, right? But this is where the mystery really starts. The rabbit hole opens up when we look at the history of that first part, the character for woman. And for that, we have to go back way back. And this is just fascinating. If you go back to the most ancient Chinese writing we have, the oracle bone script from the Shang dynasty, you find something amazing. The character for woman and the character for mother, they were the exact same character. You couldn't tell them apart. It was only later on that they added those two little dots to make a separate symbol for mother. So what does that tell us? It means that buried deep in the history of Myo is this fundamental, undifferentiated feminine principle, the creative matrix of the mother itself. Okay, so this is way more than just a cool linguistic fact. This ancient echo, this mother, hiding inside the character for wondrous, links up perfectly with a massive, profound idea in Mahāyāna Buddhism. Let me introduce you to Prajñāpāramitā. It translates to the perfection of wisdom. And what's so incredible is that across so many Buddhist traditions, this ultimate wisdom, it isn't pictured as a king or a father figure, it's pictured as a mother. Now, why is that? It's because this wisdom is seen as the generative womb, the very source from which all enlightened beings, every single Buddha, is born. Now, this is absolutely key. We have to be really clear about what this metaphor means. We're not talking about a literal biological mother. This isn't a goddess you pray to for stuff. It's a function, a capacity. It's the principle of that which can receive, can gestate, and can bring forth life, all without ever being one single solid thing. You could call it the generative openness or emptiness that everything comes from. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some new agey interpretation we're tacking on. The tradition itself says this, plain as day. This quote from an ancient sutra, it's about as clear as it gets. The perfection of wisdom is the source, the mother ground of all awakening. Period. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This whole vast cosmic mother ground thing, it can sound pretty out there, pretty abstract, but here's where the teachings do something brilliant. They bring it right down to earth, to the most intimate, personal level possible. This isn't just some story about how Buddhas were born thousands of years ago. No, this is about you, right here, right now. And that brings us to this incredible concept, tathāgatagarbha. That word, garbha, it literally means womb or treasury. And the teaching here is just mind-blowing. It suggests that the goal isn't to become a Buddha. The reality is that we are already held within awakening. We're gestating inside this Buddha womb right now. It's not something you go out and get. It's something you realize you've had the whole time. To make this idea really land, the Lotus Sutra, yep, the same one from our chant, tells this wonderful, famous story. It's a parable about a man who spends his entire life just wandering around, totally broke, completely impoverished, convinced he has absolutely nothing to his name. But here's the thing he doesn't know. Years and years ago, a good friend secretly, lovingly sewed a priceless jewel into the lining of his old, tattered robe. He's walking around with immense wealth, but he's suffering because he has no idea it's there. And of course, that jewel, that's our Buddha nature, our own inherent awakened heart. And that just illustrates the core message so perfectly, doesn't it? The story of the jewel is the teaching of the womb treasury, just in a beautiful narrative form. You have never, ever left the mother. You have never been separate from this creative, nurturing source. You've only forgotten that you're being held, that you're held by it right this very second. So, okay, we've gone through the history of a character, the philosophy of a mother ground, a parable of a jewel, but what's the bottom line? What does any of this actually mean for practice? How does knowing all this change the simple act of chanting that phrase we started with? Well, it changes everything. It shifts the entire dynamic of the practice. It's no longer a petition. It's a participation. You're not chanting to some far-off external power, begging for something you think you lack. Instead, you're chanting as the mother ground itself. The sound becomes an act of remembering, a way of sounding your way home to the source that you already are. Okay, and we absolutely have to be super clear on this next point. It's a crucial clarification. All this language of feminine and mother, it's symbolic. This is not about gender identity. This teaching doesn't belong to one gender more than another. It's about a universal function, a creative potential that is the very nature of everyone's mind, no matter how you identify. All right, let's bring this all the way back around, back to where we began, back to that one single simple character. Take another look at it. Does it look different to you now? Can you kind of see it? That echo of the mother, that hint of the generative womb, the symbol of a wisdom that gives birth to everything, encoded right there in the strokes of a brush? You know, the ancient scribes who first put this character together, they probably had no idea about any of this Buddhist philosophy. But in a way, it doesn't even matter. The character itself, over time, it became a vessel. It holds the memory of this incredible truth for us. It remembers the source we come from, even especially when we forget. And so when we chant Myo, we're doing something truly remarkable. We're bowing to that wondrous, generative source of everything. And because that source is also our own deepest nature, that jewel sewn into our robe, it means that in the very same breath, we're also bowing to ourselves.